Today we are going to work on what it is to build a birdhouse. Now, here you go. Here's your birdhouse. You may be looking at me like, what the heck are you talking about, Mr. Goop? That's no birdhouse. Well, it's not really a birdhouse, but it is the template for your birdhouse. And in the event that you set this up correctly, this would be the amount of material you would be needing for the birdhouse. Obviously, there's some cuts that need to be made and some assembly as well, but this is the start here. So, this is called the template. It's going to give you the exact measurements that you need for each of your pieces, and it's going to show you exactly what you need to do here to make this project happen. So, for a birdhouse, you'll know that there are 4 sides, bottom, and then roof. There's actually 2 roof parts to this because there's going to be one on either side of your gable end wall. So let's start here. These are your gable end pieces. You'll see that there's 45-degree angles up to the center point on each of these. They should be the same height to where that angle begins, and they should be the same height where that point concludes on each of them. And that point should be centered on your material. Then you'll have 2 sides that should be equal length and width. You'll have a roof that is the full 5 3/8 width, as is the rest of these parts. Then one of them will be cut down by 3/4 of an inch so that when you overlap them, they look equal as far as how they come off of the gable end. Okay? So there's roof 1 and then there's roof 2, and that will show you what the smaller dimension is, and then finally there's the bottom piece. So this is your template. It will be hanging up on the template wall over there, and you'll go there to start your project. As always, once we get our material, we'll start by getting a straight line on it here with the fez tool. Let's get started. I always like to make a little mark saying this is the edge that I cut so that I know this is the straight edge to work off of. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to the track saw, cut this thing to the rough length according to our template. I'm going to go ahead and cut this thing to length by laying the template right here, making a mark on my piece, and then measuring to see what my length is. I'm going to cut it to that length, then we'll go over to the bandsaw. I'm going to measure the width of my template, and once I find out what that number is, I'm going to go ahead and set the bandsaw to that width so that I can then have my piece just the same size as this template. Alright, you guys. Great. We've got our piece the same width as our template and same length according to this last line here for where we're going to cut everything. Now, what we're going to do is take this and make our marks right where the template is. Alright, once you've made all your marks, square everything over. Draw nice straight lines. Alright, so as you take all the lines across, you're going to want to make sure that they're accurate. And as you see here, I'm now showing you that the roof, the one that needs to be shorter, you will need to make sure to make a mark for 3/4 of an inch to be cut off of that one roof. So once you've made all your marks, you'll know that you have this thing set up and ready to go. You will want to then make the measurements off the template and transfer those measurements onto your piece. It may be that when you go to cut it, It will not line up exactly with your lines, but hopefully the measurements will be exactly correct. At this stage, make sure you return the template back to the board where all the templates hang. So, if everything was cut correctly, it should be that your gable wall and your side wall will connect at this point. So, you can just bring your side wall over and make a little mark, one on either side of your gable wall. And from those 2 points, you then will be able to use your tri-square. And remember to grab a tri-square that has the 45-degree angle on it, so that you will be able to draw that angle onto the pitch of the roof. I'm going to use the tri-square against the side wall here. Now, you want to make sure that you're perfectly pressed tight against there, okay? And make sure it's not too far that way or too far this way. You'll see that it should hit both sides of that 45. Now, once you have it tight and you know it's not moving around, it should feel secure. Go ahead and draw a line there. And similarly, make sure it's tight, don't let it move. Draw a line there. Now look at that. Because my sidewall was the accurate length and my measurements were correct, those meet up perfectly at the apex. Okay, now I want to show you how to draw on the center point for the hole that you will create for the birds here. So we have 5 3/8, the number we've used a fair amount. So half of 5 is 2.5, half of 3/8 is 3/16, so 2.5, 1, 2, 3, 2 11/16. So once I get that mark on there, I'll just put a square on it, kind of draw a line in the general vicinity. Now, I'm going to probably put this center point right at about 3 1/4 high. Just looks right to me. Plus, that gives me enough room to put my dowel perch on here as well. We're going to go ahead and cut out the gable line. We're going to leave that line when we cut it out so that we can go back and sand it as we need. Alright, so I'm going to show you the process. Remember, safety equipment on. We got our glasses and our earmuffs all the time. And what do I do with my scraps? I make sure to take them on over to the trash can, so that it's nice and clean for my next, for the person who's going to use this next. So here's how we did. As you can see, I left a little meat above the line. Got a little close on that, but you can still see the line everywhere, and therefore you will be able to sand this well. All right, let's move on. Now, I've selected a 2.5 inch diameter hole, and I've already got this thing clamped down. Made sure that it's clamped in a place where it's actually hitting the center of my mark. And I've set the depth stop to make sure that it's not going to go through my table. You want the depth stop to only go in maybe an 1/8 inch through your table, if anything, okay? So this is your depth stop. You should learn about that if you did the drill press test. If you've not done the drill press test, please do that before you do this section of things. So here we go, I've got my 2.5 inch. I made sure to tighten up the chuck with the chuck key, which is here. You always want to make sure you place it back where it belongs. So we're tight. We're centered, we're clamped, I have my protection, and we're ready to go. Now I only made it about halfway through, if that, and what I would need to do is back it off, stop the machine, and clear the teeth, because sometimes the sawdust gets stuck in there. Okay, you obviously don't want to do that while the machine is on. Now the teeth are clear, it's ready to cut again. Machine stops. Take the clamp off, make sure you place it where it belongs. There we go. I got a nice centered hole for my bird stencher through. So after you're done, you're going to want to make sure, maybe find like a screwdriver that's over here. You're going to want to press this piece out so that the next person doesn't have to deal with your rubbish. There are 3 little areas that you can get to. Look at that. Nice little wheel for a car or something. There we go. 3/4 of an inch before I have that down. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up right where it needs to be. This is a 1/4 inch drill bit. Okay, and I'll clamp it down just so you can see how I center it. I bring that down and then I just tap it with a hammer. Gently, whatever way it needs to go. And that's pretty simple. Okay. Table's clear, this is clamped. I'm ready to roll. Now you want to take this not quite all the way through. If you take it all the way through, then your dowel will go through. But if you just take it most of the way, then your dowel will have something to sit against. There we go, we got our hole. Alright, here we go. We've got our gables pretty ready to go. Just need to sand those down. The last cut we need to make is for the roof number 2. Roof number 2 needs to come off 3/4 of an inch. So you can either measure 3/4 of an inch, and then when you go to the bandsaw, measure what's remaining. Okay, so it should be about 4 5/8. Or you can take your 5 3/8 and subtract 3/4 and do the math, and then you figure it out the same way. Alright, so then I'm going to set my bandsaw to that number. Get my push sticks, get my safety equipment on. And our goal is to take off that top 3/4 of an inch. Alright, there we go. Now we have that roof piece, which, check it out, when you put that one underneath the other one, you'll see they're going to look nice and even once you put that on the gable ends. Alright, before you start nailing this thing together, it's always good to do a dry fit. So a dry fit is basically putting all the pieces where they're going to go, making sure that they all line up. You'll want to put the bottom piece in against your sides and have the gable ends up. That way you'll know whether the bottom piece is pushing your sides too far out, therefore making it proud of the gable ends, or perhaps the bottom piece is too small and makes them inset. There are different ways that they could turn out if the bottom piece is not the right dimension. Similarly, you'll see if your sides and your gable walls line up, and whether or not your roof sits nicely on top of your gable walls, or whether or not you'll need to trim something back. Now that you've done your dry fit, it's time to start assembling. There are kind of 2 different ways you can do this. I chose to use smaller gauge nails, which means they're a smaller diameter, and that way I can just use my hammer and the nail, and should be no problems with that as far as the material blowing out or having a difficulty getting the nails in. The one downside is the nails do bend over a little easier. If you would like to use a thicker gauge nail with a bigger head on it, that is also an option, and it is a little bit stronger. But what you'll have to do for that is to pre-drill with a drill bit and make sure that that has a pilot hole that the nail will follow, and will make it a lot easier for those nails to go in and to not accidentally follow the grain and pop out of your material, or worse yet, cause your material to split or break. So here I go. I started with the corner, making sure that I flushed out the sides and flushed it out front to back. Then I proceeded on the middle and the other corner, getting my roof together. So the roof came together pretty nice, and now I'll move on to the body of the birdhouse. With the body of the birdhouse, I recommend that you start with applying the sides to the bottom.
kind of creating a U shape. So I would stick one of the sides into a vise, and then once you get the side in the vise, get the bottom applied to it, and start nailing away. Once you get the one side done, the next one you'll have to do outside of the vise, which will require a little more dexterity. There you go. You got your U shape, and you start applying the gable walls. And last but not least, after you got the gable walls on, you can set that roof on top and finish off the job. Not a bad birdhouse, what do you say?